Welcome back to Season 5 of Porcelain Peak. This week, a.k.a. the Thunderdome.
Ooh. See, as soon as we started this movie, I was like, holy shit, I'm very confused because I don't even know what the Thunderdome is yet, and you're telling me we're going beyond it? Ridiculous.
And we'll talk about that. Anyway, we are going to do some Chop Talk, then we're going to play some trivia, and then we are going to continue our March Madness, talking about
March Madness.
3. Yeah. And we are, me, Tone, joined by Mike Flanagan. Was it? Finnegan.
Michael Finnegan.
Michael Finnegan. And Anthony.
So was that your impression of Master Blaster?
Me
Tone. Me John. Me Anthony.
Yep. Nailed it.
Because apparently a nuclear apocalypse means everyone forgets how to speak the English language. Could be
Especially
a thing.
children.
Who knows? Yeah. But how you guys doing this week?
Pretty good.
We haven't gotten into Chop Talk yet, so I guess it doesn't matter. I don't
Okay,
want to
fine.
know.
Let's go straight to it. Nailing this one.
Why don't you take an axe and chop it open?
John, I want you to wrap some bungee cords around me and just throw me around. What do you think?
I mean, I'm not opposed.
I'm done with you. How are you, Anthony?
Damn.
My stomach's into this idea. If anybody's listening to this episode and you hear a fourth guest, a fourth host on the show, that's the 2 El Monterey frozen burritos that I have currently rolling around in my tum-tum. But
chicken and rice or bean and cheese or beef and bean? What do you got?
just bean and cheese, baby. Just bean and cheese. But much like the wealthier members of the post-apocalyptic Mad Max society, I got gas.
Wow.
Yeah. So how
It's
you?
going to be a real fun episode.
No, we've
yeah.
covered how I'm doing. How you doing?
I'm doing good because this weekend, Everything Everywhere All at Once won a bunch of Oscars.
Sure fucking did.
And that's
It
what we call a
did.
segue, son.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do for Chop Talk this week, since a little peek behind the curtain here, we just recorded our previous episode 2 nights ago or 2 days ago. So not a whole lot of news besides the fact that I will mention real quick, Quentin Tarantino is going into production on his new movie.
Something about Critic.
It's called The Movie Critic, supposedly. People don't know anything about it outside of it's potentially going to be set in 1970s New York and is supposed to go into production in the fall, like into filming in the fall. So look out for that. But for our main bit of Chop Talk, we're going to be talking about the Oscars and our highlights from that night. So for anyone who doesn't know how we operate, we have been doing as much as we can, a little competition, a little get-together competition.
/ watch party.
Like most of the things we do on this show, it kind of started as just kind of a thing between us back in the day when we used to live together. But we would do our ballots and see who could get more categories right than the other person. And that evolved into having a trophy, which we named the Emmeline Sacheen Gaynor Award.
Yep.
I cannot for the life of me remember where the Emmeline comes from. I know the Sacheen.
The first person to win a Razzie.
Oh, okay.
For like worst actress.
Yeah, I was trying
so we
to.
got worst, best, and then
Sacheen Littlefeather.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have this award. As you can see, as you've probably seen in a lot of episodes in the background, Tone has held this award for going on, 5-6 years?
it's been a minute.
It's 5 because I have video evidence of the last time that you won it, which is the only other person to have ever won it.
And
I've gotten close like 1 or 2 times.
all I got to say is the hierarchy of the Oscars universe has changed.
He flipped it on its fucking head.
For 2023, guess who won the brand new Emmeline Sacheen Gaynor Award? Bought this trophy and then immediately took it home with me. So if you're not watching the video version, I'm holding up a trophy. I won the night, but it wasn't a sweep.
It was close. Yeah.
Very close.
Last year, I think I had 18, you had 17. And this year, you had
You
18,
just flipped it,
I
yeah.
had 17. I was like, God damn it.
I
that's-
had 12 or 13, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so everyone who participated in the night did pretty well. I mean,
Double
everybody got
digits,
into
everyone.
double digits. Yeah, so
And we did better than Dan Merrill.
yeah.
Merrill?
which I was very happy about. I was like,
fuck you, dude.
unsubscribe.
You lose. Good day, sir.
Well, it's like, how am I supposed to watch you if my opinion is obviously better than yours? But if this sounds like something that you guys would want to get down on in the future, it would be kind of cool maybe for us to expand it out a little bit and have some other people submit their ballots. And
That'd be tight.
Not that we're going to
send
you a trophy or anything.
Oh,
But,
never mind.
no, but let's talk a little bit about how the night went. So we recorded our Mad Max episode and got that all in our Scream 6 review. So go check that out if you haven't already. We recorded that earlier in the day and then got prepped for the Oscars, watched a bit of the pre-show, and then got right into it. And I have all of the category winners here. I can go through them real quick.
I think that overall, I had a good time with the show. It was a pretty simple show. Mm-hmm. Paid tribute to the movies. Kind of had this Gatsby feel to some of the decoration behind the set. And they did these really cool marquees that felt very like movie theater, like old school movie theater. So I really liked that. There was a lot of slap jokes that from what took place last year. I think we tallied up 7 or 8.
It was
total.
7 or 8, yeah. But I mean, overall, Kimmel had a solid night. He had a lot of good jokes that landed. I mean, I wasn't mad about that.
Well, and as Dan Merle said in his video, the Oscars have done a lot in recent years to kind of besmirch the name of the Oscars and the Academy, and the shows have gotten a little bit too like controversial and weird, and there's just been a lot of weird drama with the whole Moonlight La La Land mix up and then the Will Smith thing last year, and so it really felt like they were trying to play it as safe as possible this year, and I think that was the best move.
Yeah, and there was the weird year where like they were walking around like interviewing people and like couches and tables, right? Like, they did some weird stuff.
They used to try to do like gimmicky setups and stuff. This was in a smaller theater. It definitely felt like the crowd was a lot smaller than normal, which was kind of cool. Like the whole thing had a much more intimate feel, which I really appreciated. See, I'm fancy now that I won that award. They also kept a really good pace throughout the show, which was nice.
A couple people got played off, which I thought was good.
Well, and then we can, talk a little bit about the whole Little Mermaid thing, but they kept a good pace while also making sure to bring back all of those technical awards onto the live show and give those the credit that they deserve, as opposed to last year where they filmed them remotely and then just showed clips of them on the show. So it was nice to have all the awards back. Kimmel is like the safest possible bet for Academy Awards host. And I thought he did fine. Like there were a couple parts where I was like, okay, it's not your show because all of the night, or the late night show hosts, it's all politics now. Like every monologue from them I see is just like, basically because they found easy jokes with Trump. Now the whole thing is like all of their monologues are just fucking, constant politics. And there's a couple points where he slipped some of that stuff in. And I was like, okay, like back it up a little bit. But overall, he was doing like what most Oscar hosts do, which is poking fun at the celebrities in the audience. And it's like
everybody seemed to be game as well. The part where he like starts calling out to all of the actors who have played badass characters in the crowd,
that was
pretty hilarious.
Yeah, he was like, "You're gonna have to deal with the Mandalorian," and it pointed at Pedro Pascal, and he was like, "Yeah," and Spider-Man, and Garfield's like, "Yeah," and the Fableman, and Spielberg. Yeah, he had some funny bits, and I laughed a lot. And I'm not even like I'm
not a big
notoriously not a stand-up comedy fan, so like usually the Oscar thing is even like a step below stand-up comedy for me in terms of enjoyment. But yeah, I thought it was good that it was simple. They didn't do too much outside of just having him kind of like fake parachute in the beginning and then bringing the donkey out. He does a little bit of the classic crowd work, but he made sure to let everybody know in the beginning, like, hey, we're trying to keep this a civil, safe, like mellow show.
Speaking of highlights, though, that donkey. Seeing Colin Farrell's face when that donkey came out.
He lit the fuck up, dude.
I was like, oh my God, I wish somebody would look at me like that. Holy cow. I'd be a jackass.
I wish Colin Farrell would look at me like that. But
that warmed my heart.
Yeah. And then on top of all of that, I thought that pretty much all of the speeches were really heartfelt, very emotional. The moment where best short feature when they did the whole like, let's sing happy birthday to the actor from the movie, and the whole crowd sang happy birthday to him.
Yeah, I think best short live action.
And so that whole moment was great. And then
such a cool surprise too.
Yeah, so outside of playing off a couple people, which happens every show. I was surprised that didn't happen more. They seemed to really only be playing people off when they thought that their speeches were about to end.
Yeah.
And then they would, start playing. But
yeah, and the guy that wrote the best song for RRR, he sang a little bit, which was really cool. Yeah, so we had a lot of variety. So yeah, I mean, there was points where I was like, I could cry. And
there were points where I did cry.
I'm
Kiwi Kwan's
leaking.
speech killed me, and then just set me off on an awful path of just leaking from the face for the majority.
yeah, I
of
was
the
like,
show.
holy cow! Especially some of those. I feel like the first few speeches, I was like, God damn! Like we are in for a show. So that was really cool. I liked that too.
Well, and I told my sister when I was kind of recapping the show for her, and I was telling Adrian, like, this really felt like it was like the Porcelain Peak Oscars in terms of kind of catering to everything that we love, because Everything Everywhere All at Once did spectacularly, obviously. Brendan Fraser got Best Actor, and also the Whale one for makeup and hairstyling.
We've been a big fan of for a long time.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis won for Best Supporting Actress, which a lot of people will have their opinions about, and you're more than welcome to disagree with that. But I did think she had a great speech. She was obviously very emotional about it. I think that in terms of her career, she deserves it. And also, I just loved that she shouted out, the genre fans, the horror fans. Obviously, like, she can't completely ignore the fact that she was just in Halloween Ends, like a few months ago. So, at least shouting that out is nice and not pretending that she doesn't do those movies.
And the way that she said it, too, where she was like, all of the millions and millions of people who have watched my genre films. Because it's like, yeah, that shit gets ignored.
Yeah.
Basically at the Oscars. Like, you're hard pressed to find a horror movie at all.
Yeah, and then
that's right.
And then just A24 in general, with both The Whale and Everything Everywhere All at Once, just dominating.
It's literally the first time that a studio has won for every major category. Because they won for Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Director, and Best Film.
And screenplay. Winning one of the screenplays.
Yeah.
It counts into that. And they won for Best
Adapted. Original.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the makeup and hairstyling for The Whale. But they did spectacularly, and I was really happy about that. And Everything Everywhere All at Once, obviously, like, we have an episode about it. You can go back and listen to our review if you want our in-depth thoughts. But, we've talked about it enough. We fucking loved the movie, and I am so happy to see, in the same Oscar run as Steven Spielberg and John Williams, and like you have been arguing for, a couple months now, this whole thing of, it's a Spielberg movie with John Williams. It's about Spielberg's life. It's about filmmaking. In any other like lineup of movies, that would have absolutely killed the Oscars, or something like Elvis, which I feel like is also a very classic, flashy, about a famous historical figure. Has the very and has the makeup and the performance and everything. Didn't win shit. The only movie that I think like I really would have liked to have seen win more than it did, which was nothing, was Tar, because Tar was definitely one of my favorite movies of last year. But overall, I was very happy. We don't have to go through all the categories, but yeah, highlights obviously were all of the awards for Everything Everywhere All at Once. I really, really liked All Quiet on the Western Front, and that did really well. It was nice to see that. I kept saying not to throughout the entire night. I loved that performance. It was probably...
Oh my God, that was such a fucking good performance.
Yeah.
The choreography was fantastic.
Yeah, and I thought that overall the performances were a little hit and miss. I was a little bit disappointed to see the Sunlux, David Byrne, Stephanie Hsu, Everything Everywhere All at Once performance sounded very like weird and off, and I think it's just because the type of music that Sunlux doesn't translate super well to like a live atmosphere. But
I didn't really notice there was so much weird shit going on. I was just thinking about that.
Well, and then even like I thought even the In Memoriam with Lenny Kravitz, who I'm not even a huge fan of, but I thought that his performance was great song choice. Also, Travolta's speech where he's just like getting super emotional about Olivia Newton-John. Yeah, it clicked with me until obviously, she was the first name that popped up, and I was like, oh fuck. And everybody, gets nervous about Travolta on stage
after the Adele Dazeem disaster. And Lady Gaga's performance also was very emotional. You could tell she was like,
well, like Merle said
really
in his video, like it felt like she was bringing something like personal to it. Like it felt like a personal little like garage band performance outside of the camera person just wanting to be right up in her fucking nostrils.
Oh my God, what was that?
I mean, I think it was them going, we need to make this more intimate, so we're gonna. And I'm like,
it was way too
she's
close
doing
to me.
enough of that with just her voice. Come on.
yeah.
Looking like Anthony Silva.
And then Kwan's award, obviously his speech, him talking about how Corey Feldman had reached out to him. I mentioned to you guys that his entertainment lawyer is the actor who played Chunk in the Goonies. So him saying the whole, Goonies never say die thing was great. And then obviously having Harrison Ford be the one to present Best Picture and then having them hug on stage.
That was so cool.
Iconic
And to see their
moment.
faces, like, I don't know, people are always talking shit about Harrison Ford being like this grumpy old man, and in a lot of ways he is, but to see him light up like that, I was like, you got some heart to you.
And then people mentioning like, hey, these two guys from Encino Man are now Oscar-winning actors.
Which, until recently, I didn't realize that was the same actor from The Goonies and from Indiana Jones.
Yeah. But yeah,
Because I've seen Encino Man.
other than that, I do want.
Yeah.
I did want to quickly mention I was very happy to see Del Toro win for Pinocchio and his team, and it seems like animation is something that he's going to continue pursuing. He already has another animated project with Netflix in the works. So
just do Frankenstein already, you fuck.
yeah, I know it'll happen eventually. I don't think there's any stopping it.
I guess the only part that really irritated me, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, is that a couple people did get played off because we were crunched for time, and they mentioned that at the beginning, like, okay, we're trying to keep things quick, and a lot of the ways that they did that was here's 2 awards back to back.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great, because I'm always like, let's get to the awards. Like, that's why we're all here.
Yeah.
All the other stuff is just whatever.
But if we're gonna do that, like,
If we're going to do that, don't stop the middle of the show to then play an ad for a movie. That's the part where I was like, why are you wasting time here when these people who just won probably one of the best achievements of their lives are getting played off? Like,
well, and like when you have these multiple groups that are coming up where it's like 2 or 3 people who are a screenwriting team or a visual editing team, and they are all up on stage, and like you can tell that they all have things they want to say or people they want to thank. Like they want to talk to their families in this like really, really crucial moment of their lives, and they're being shooed away, and only the first person gets to speak. While on the other hand, people like Brendan Fraser and Ke Huy Quan get to talk for like 2.5, 3 minutes uninterrupted. Like, it's not really equitable.
Right. I think some of that has to do with like the bigger categories, get the bigger speeches. But some of it could have been like you were saying earlier, and we said the other night, like it seemed like at least for one of them, it seemed like they were done, and then they started playing the music. So you never know. But I felt shitty to then have an ad for 3 minutes or whatever.
So, I mean, and this is basically just, again, me kind of regurgitating what Dan Merle said in his video. If you haven't checked out his channel, he did an Oscar recap. He's a fantastic movie reviewer and movie guy, and I think he always has insightful stuff to say, and he fucking knows the Oscars. Like, he's done a lot of analysis on them. And one, it's not a very classy move for all the reasons you just said. Two, it feels like it suddenly obviously there's a lot of corporate politics and stuff that go into the Oscars, but it's a very blatant like, hey, ABC is owned by Disney and they're doing the Oscars, so we're going to show a trailer for our next upcoming movie. 3, I think it's embarrassing for the actors who have to come out and do that. And also it's like Avatar: The Way of Water won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, and you're going to show your trailer for your fucking shit Little Mermaid movie in the middle of all of this. Like, to me, I was like, I get it. If it was some bit like this is going to be a contender next year for the Oscars, and we're going to show you a sneak peek at Oppenheimer or something, like that would have made a little bit more sense. I still would have felt like it was weird and a waste of time. But for it to be Disney's The Little Mermaid that they're interrupting the Oscars for, I was like, come on, guys, like this is weird. It
ain't gonna be here next year.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But that's just Disney. Why can't really be surprised about them being shitty corporate assholes. But overall, yeah, I thought that it was a really charming, heartfelt, emotional show. People again will have their opinions about certain winners and things that happened at the show and try to create drama around the whole thing. But I'm just happy when an Oscar year passes and the conversation is not going to be entirely dominated by one stupid person's mistake on stage,
right?
Whether that's mixing up an award or physically assaulting somebody. So nice to have an ordinary, boring.
Yeah, people can
Oscars.
argue about the people that they wanted to win not winning instead of any other bullshit. So the focus is actually on
the performances.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, if you have opinions, keep them to yourself. No, I'm just kidding. Share them in the comments. Let us know how you felt about the show. If you watched it, if you didn't, were any of these movies that didn't win awards, make an argument for why they should have won. I saw pretty much all of them, so I think that it was a killer year, and I think that 2023 is going to have some tough competition, stacking up a lineup of movies that matches up to what we got last year. But every year, shit comes out of the blue and suddenly is the talk of the town. So we'll see.
I will say that this ceremony kind of revitalized my interest in this in general, like the Oscars in general, and watching them again. Because the last couple of years, I'm like, I don't really care. Like,
Well,
we
it
didn't even get
was
together
felt like an
last year.
obligation.
Well, it was condensed shows, and we'd been talking about how like turned off of the Oscars we'd been for years because we felt like performances from underrepresented groups weren't being considered. And I mean, obviously,
it's crazy that Michelle is the second person
of color
to ever win Best Actress, and the first Asian woman to win it. And I
Yeah.
was like, fucking rad, great for you, but that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why Halle Berry was so emotional, giving her the award and, walking with her out, because Halle Berry's the other one.
It seems like they did a lot to craft a lot of moments like that, though, too. Like the fact that the person who gave the award to Kwon, was so emotionally shaken up by just reading his name.
Well, and it also makes me, because we know that they don't know, or that, like, obviously they don't know ahead of time to plan that kind of stuff, and it's backfired on them before. So I was really happy that all of those setups paid off in this show, because they did that in the past when Chadwick passed, and they thought he was going to win the Best Actor award for, I think, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It was the year he was running against Anthony Hopkins in The Father, and Hopkins won the award, but they had set it up on stage assuming that Chadwick was going to win, and had all this like video stuff of Chadwick throughout the show, like kind of prepping everybody to be like a really emotionally devastated when he won the award. Hopkins won and didn't come to the show because he's 100,000 years old, and he's Odin, and he's off in Asgard, doing shit there. And so it was just like a dud of a setup for a moment, and it kind of backfired on them. And so it can work sometimes, but in this show, it seemed like everything went off relatively without a hitch.
Yeah,
So,
but it got me excited again.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's so crazy that a movie that came out so early in 2022,
And a movie that we didn't think that anybody outside of
Us.
people we knew would even watch this fucking, like Swiss Army Man. Like, how many people do you actually know saw that movie? And it's crazy that a movie that has a fucking butt plug action fight like just won a fucking Oscar. Like, I never would have guessed.
has a raccoony.
not an Oscar, let alone many Oscar.
Yeah, it's
Well, it's now officially the most awarded film of all time, like across all the awards ceremonies.
I think it deserves that.
and I heard the first sci-fi movie
for sci-fi to win Best Picture. Yeah.
That's
So we didn't even
fucking
mention
nuts.
that. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big deal for our show, obviously, because that's half the show.
Yeah.
But
That's
yeah.
fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Like, it reinvigorated my interest in next year, and it made, like, even though I did go hardcore on watching as many of the movies as I could, like I always try to do with this, I think like this year I'm gonna be even more so trying to like watch all the smaller categories and all that, and like really try to maybe for once have seen everything that's on the ballot. That would be pretty sick. We'll see.
That's hard though. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, that's going to wrap it up for Chop Talk and our discussion on the Oscars. Like Anthony said, if you want to share your opinions, feel free. But in the meantime, we're going to segue into trivia.
Ooh, that's a segue. Ooh.
Black Christmas, House of Wax, The Fog, Piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
Before we get started with Trivial Pursuit, we had a bonus question last week.
Question.
That was when they were trying to adapt the Mad Max TV show. Who was the front runner to be in it? Actually, I guess I should make a little correction here. There was a man who was cast, and then he got
I read
into
about
an
this,
accident
after
and
the
was
fact.
paralyzed. After that, who was the person that they liked for the role the most?
I said Keanu.
Yes.
My
you
guess
said
was Duchovny.
Right.
Yeah.
And the correct answer was the Chin himself, Mr. Bruce Campbell.
Which, especially after watching this and my continued comparisons of this franchise to the Evil Dead franchise,
I enjoyed Army of Darkness more than I enjoyed Thunderdome.
by a lot. But Max and Ash are I wouldn't say like personality wise similar characters, but like archetype very similar characters.
I mean, if you compare Army of Darkness to Beyond Thunderdome, maybe in this particular instance they're a little more similar, but we'll get into that in our discussion.
Yeah. All right, cool. Do we have a
New question?
yeah, I
bonus
do.
question? Okay.
I got a new one that relates to what we're talking about this week. So
I barely finished Thunderdome before you guys came over, so I did not think of another question.
Thunderdome.
I tried to watch a lot of it yesterday, and then I was like, I gotta go to bed.
I brought a little bit of bonus material since I don't really have too much to say about Thunderdome. But for your question, your trivia question this week, Warner Brothers ended up giving the full rights of The Road Warrior and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome to George Miller if he would agree to step down as director from what 1997 sci-fi film?
If he would step down as
Yes.
Science fiction.
So he had spent a year of production on this movie, and Warner Brothers wanted him to leave. So they were
Why?
like, cool. Well, we'll get into it when I reveal the answer
Oh my
next week.
God.
But they said, if you step down, we'll hand over the rights to Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome to you.
You said Warner Brothers is the company?
Warner Brothers, 1997 science.
Did this
fiction
movie
film
get made?
Hmm?
Okay.
with a different director? but
I'm
I
going to
don't wanna say
say Men in Black.
who. Okay, good guess.
Ooh,
Good
that
guess.
is a good guess. I'll say X-Files.
Okay, also a good guess. You guys are circling around it, but I'll reveal the answer next week. It's very interesting, and maybe we can go a little bit more next week into... George Miller just has really bad luck with projects. He spent fucking forever making a Justice League movie, like starting a Justice League movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was right after Happy Feet or right before Happy Feet. He was making Justice League Mortal. Had the whole cast: Armie Hammer, what's his face from the OC, the quirky friend, Adam Brody. Yeah, it was the Flash. Armie Hammer was
Okay.
Batman. Had a bunch of like great cast and everything. They had gone out to Australia, obviously, to start filming, and then I believe the writer's strike happened. And
Brutal.
fucked the whole thing, and it fell apart. But anyway, let's
Trivial
get into
Pursuit.
Trivial Pursuit.
We're going to read a category, then go in a circle reading to each other with me to John to Anthony, and Anthony back to me. And Anthony is coming off, just want to call it a one, or how are we doing it because of the Lost episode?
It's
For continuity.
It's a streak where I kind of like veered off the road a little bit, but then I corrected. I got back on.
You hit the oh shit bumps.
Yep.
All right. Fair enough. See if you can keep it going. First category is
Monster.
John Let Me In from 2010 is a remake of what Swedish film?
Let the right one in.
Yes.
Let me in.
I'll give you a Tony point if you can tell me the year of Let the Right One In.
Let the right one in?
I just want to see if you can flex. No harm, no foul.
2009.
Ooh, 2008. You were close, though.
I was close. Anything you give me a fucking number on, I'm going to miss it by one.
And
guaranteed.
And hey, on top of that, I will definitely not give you a tugger if you can name the author of the novel Let the Right One In.
Is it John Lindquist?
Advent, yeah. Lindquist.
Anthony, what is the ancient Egyptian name of the titular character in Damum from 1932?
It never fails, baby. I almost got you a mummy shirt.
Is it Imhotep?
It is indeed
Imhotep. Did you guys see the thing I sent you where it was like, oh my gosh, Imhotep just walked up on the stage and slapped Brendan Fraser?
Just went up to him and yelled at him.
Tone, what actor played Ash in Army of Darkness from 1992?
Bruce Campbell.
It is indeed old Bruce.
Sweet.
Yeah,
After round
Bruce
one,
did
we
it.
are all on the board, and we're moving into
Gore/disturbing.
Eyeballs down.
John. What fluid spilled on the mattress she died upon resurrects Julia Cotton in Hellbound Hellraiser 2?
I mean, if it's Hellraiser, it could be any number of fluids.
I'm going to just say blood.
That is correct,
I
baby.
I almost said semen.
Yeah, which would have been a fine
Yeah.
answer because of
Yes.
the series. Yeah.
100%.
With Clive Barker, any of it's fair game.
Anthony, in Dead Alive from 1992, what is the relationship between the first zombie, Vera, and the protagonist, Lionel?
Is it his mom? Are they mother and son?
They are indeed mother and son.
That part with the pudding. Is
So
it custard?
gross.
Whatever. I don't know.
Have we ever covered that on the show?
I don't know.
Maybe in a Terror Tales, but if not, we should definitely find
I
a.
guess we could have done that. For
Oh yeah, we could. I thought about
What's
it, but
the
I
other
was
name?
Brain Dead.
So we also
Yeah.
missed it.
All right.
I mean, we can find an excuse. Tone, the director of Freaks from 1932, also directed what 1931 Universal monster film?
Frankenstein.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's Dracula.
Oh,
Todd Browning.
what was I thinking? Oh, James
James
Whale. That's my bad.
Shot from the hip?
Yeah, I
Missed.
got a wee bit cocky
I
there.
did, yeah. I know what we could do. We could just do D next week, so then we did double D's.
These nuts, right? Yeah. These
right.
nuts, yeah.
Well, John and Anthony are doing pretty good. I'm not doing so good. And we're moving into psychological.
Is indeed psychological.
John, the director of The Descent from 2005, was nominated for an Emmy Award for his directing on what HBO series?
HBO series. Oh.
2009. Wait, did I say 2009? No, I didn't say it. 2005. That's when The Descent was. I'm just rambling now.
Okay.
It doesn't say when he won it.
He does only direct things that take place underground. So, you're going to be kicking yourself about that later, huh?
I probably still wouldn't have.
I'm gonna say The Wire.
Ooh, it was Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. I think that's
no
probably
way.
your hardest question tonight.
Okay.
Thrones.
Don't feel too bad about it. Anthony, what is the name of the political party that it institutes the annual purge in the Purge series from 2013 to 2018? Obviously, there's been more purges since then.
Isn't it some dumb shit like the new founding fathers
Of
America?
Yeah.
The purge is purging. Tone, in The Invitation from 2015, what was the name of the deceased son of Eden and Will?
Oh my god.
I think I'm the most recent to watch this film, and I don't remember any of that shit.
To me, these are the most unfair questions when it's like, remember a character's name.
That's not even an actual
Yeah.
character. Jacob.
It is Ty. T-Y.
I wouldn't have got that in a million years.
Tyann Weast.
All right. So John's sitting at 2. Anthony's sitting at 3, correct? Mm-hmm. And I got just the 1. And we're moving into
Paranormal?
John. What film was the first collaboration between writer-director M. Night Shyamalan and actor Bruce Willis?
I believe it's Unbreakable.
Oh, but it's The Sixth
The
Sense.
Sixth Sense.
I thought Unbreakable came out first. I think we've had this conversation before.
Nope. It was The Sixth Sense.
1999.
Then it was Signs. Then it was...
No. I don't think Bruce Willis is in that.
No, I'm saying the order of M. Night Shyamalan movies. I'm
so
saying
that-
he did The Sixth Sense,
that's Mad
then
Max.
Signs, then...
That's Mad Max Beyond the Field.
I don't know if The Village or Unbreakable came first, but I think it was either the third or the fourth movie.
Yeah, I always thought the order was Unbreakable, then Sixth Sense, and then Signs, Village, Lady in the Water.
The Happening.
I just always remember the trailer for that movie because at the end it went, Lady in the Water, rated PG-13. And my sister and I used to just randomly like turn to each other when we were just randomly just go, Lady in the Water, rated PG-13.
It's pretty weird.
If she listens to this, she'll remember that. Anyway,
What actress played Thomason in The Vivitch from 2015?
is it Anya Taylor-Joy?
Yeah.
I going back and like seeing clips from The Witch, it's crazy how young she is in that movie. Like I forget because I haven't watched it super recently and I'm just so used to seeing her in other things, but she has such a baby face in that movie, and for her to have just always been as incredible as she is, it's pretty impressive. Tone, what is the name of the entity communicating with the youngest Freeling child in a Poltergeist from 1982?
Poltergeist.
The name of the entity?
The entity.
And Titty.
Oh, man. I don't remember having a name, to be honest with you. It is Gabagool.
Here. Ooh, so close. It's The Beast,
Oh.
which is also the name of McAvoy's character in Split, which is a sequel to Unbreakable. There we go, bringing it around.
Wow.
Free associated all over the mustache.
Spoiler alert. for Split.
Crazy. John, give me a recap of the scores, will you?
4 for Anthony,
Right on.
2 for myself,
Wow.
and 1 for you.
Bummer. And we're moving into
Killer.
John, who was the only actor to play Jason Voorhees more than once in the Friday the 13th series from 1980 to 1989.
Is that our boy Kane fucking Hodder?
Starting with Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Hodder played the role 4 times.
Sheesh.
And we potentially might be meeting that Chucklefuck.
That would be pretty.
So I'm pretty
dope.
excited, yeah.
Anthony, what Superman actress was also in Black Christmas from 1974?
Margot Kidder,
Indeed, it was Margot Kidder.
Wow, good pull.
who was also married to John Hurd for like 6 days.
All right.
And we talked about Chud, which he's in. So
Check out pretty cool.
You don't have to try to make connections in every question.
they just happen.
I just appreciate it. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Tone, for your hockey boy question, what is the relationship between Papa Jupiter and Ruby in The Hills Have Thighs from 1977?
Man. I don't know. Papa Jupiter and Ruby, they're father and daughter.
That's what it says here. Father-daughter. You nailed it. Good job.
Sweet. Hopefully not any more than that.
Papa, can you eat me?
All right. So, John, you're
We're-
sitting at...
So we both got 2. He's got 5. The game is already over, but let's get some pity questions
No,
going.
you don't got 2.
Yeah.
You got 3.
Oh, did I get the last one just now?
Yeah, you got Kane Hodder.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Then 3, 2, but he has 5. Game's already over. Give us our pity question.
Don't sell yourself short,
Okay, Jesus. Tell me the category.
It's international.
Although Ju-On from 2002, John, is the first film in the series to be theatrically released, what number film is it in the series?
The 2.
It is the 3rd.
Now I'm just imagining
Off by 1.
a teacher calling roll like in elementary school. It's like, is there a Ju-On Brasher here? It's like, it's John.
All right, let's see if we can get the sweep here. In The Orphanage from 2007, what does Simon require daily to survive?
Food. Water.
Those are all, I mean, aside from pizza, those are all fair.
I really need to rewatch this movie because this is, I think, the second or third question I've gotten about it. But I'm going to take a wild guess and say insulin.
I'm going to accept that. It is medication, but I don't know what the specific disease is. Insulin is a medication. If you
want to give me the sweep, I'm more than happy to take it.
I mean, you were going to win anyway, so there's no hurt in saying that there's no connection there.
Crazy enough, I already got a trophy right here for the win.
I'm glad that you're so humble about it.
No, I've just been taking this to work and over to the gas station, and when they're like, "Oh, hey, it's going to be $12.99 for
How much is that in trophy?
for that pack of soda," I'm like, "You sure about that?"
Yes, sir.
Here's the deal. I know that they sold the candle version of the butt plug trophy from the IRS. You should have bought that instead. That would have been pretty fun.
That would have been fun. Probably a lot more expensive, though.
Well, yeah,
True.
then it would be a trophy that I could use.
Hello.
As a candle, obviously.
Obvious.
Not
And
a
then-
butt
And
plug.
then it melts inside you, and then you're the candle. Just stick a wick in my mouth. And
I'll stick a wick in your mouth.
A John Wick.
it depends on how good John Wick 4 is. Tone, for your final question. In the opening of Suicide Club from 2001.
Ooh.
That's Jared Leto in Suicide Club, right? How many school children are in the group of victims at the train station?
5.
Ooh, you were so close. It's 54. You were off by a factor of 10.
Well, yeah. Can't argue with that, huh?
Yeah.
Can't argue with them results.
Good game.
Not really.
now I'm trying to be humble, and you're actively fighting me. So you know what? Fuck you guys.
Fuck you, I'm great.
I'm the trivia champion.
I had momentum, and John fucked me.
That's not true at all. You fucked you.
I'm saying when I won that last week.
Who runs Trivia Town? I do.
Auntie.
Tina Turner.
All right.
And with that,
Wrapping up trivia, we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to start with our main discussion talking about Beyond Thunderdome.
to infinity and beyond Thunderdome.
Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more. Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more.
Hey, you want to see something really scary?
Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get started with our main discussion, continuing March Madness.
Vroom,
Madness.
Vroom, 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 vroom.
Kinda.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's why I'm a little bit less
It's
enthusiastic.
a little vroom.
with my car noises.
And we're talking about Mad Max 3 Beyond Thunderdome. Again, Mel Gibson reprising his role as Max Ratinsky?
Rockatansky.
He had it the first week. He
And
nailed it.
I don't know about that. No, that was him. And then George Miller, again, reluctantly, I think, behind the camera.
George Miller and George Ogilvy.
Yeah, from what I heard, right. So at the end of this movie, you might notice that it says for Byron.
Mm-hmm.
That was because during the beginning stages of the production of this film, George's friend and co-creator of the franchise,
Byron Kennedy.
Byron Kennedy passed away.
Crashed his helicopter while he was location scouting for this movie, which is hardcore and tragic. And also, I'm sick of talking about helicopter crashes on this show.
And because of that, George Miller himself was not super into this project. I think he said so himself, but it did help him kind of grieve, where he did shoot just most of the action sequences.
Yeah, so we were kind of questioning in previous weeks if this was actually like the most disliked child of the bunch, the odd man out of the bunch, and I would say after rewatching it, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It feels the least like a Mad Max movie in some ways, and then the most like a Mad Max movies in other ways, and that's
Couldn't
what's,
put it better myself.
And that's what's so
frustrating
about it. Yep, exactly.
Well, it has the style of Road Warrior.
Mm-hmm. And I would say even pushes it further into being more similar to Fury Road. And so in terms of like the way
language.
the vehicles look, the language, the culture of the people, you even get like a little hint at what the War Boys would look like with the one kid with like the skull paint on his face. And so there's little things where you can see that there's obviously still continuing to be a transition into where we get in Fury Road. But really it's the first 40 minutes of this movie are awesome. Mm-hmm. Fucking dopest dope I ever smoked in the Thunderdome, and then it just completely goes off the rails in a boring way. It turns into the movie Hook.
That's what I thought too. I was like, this is really like Hook.
Yeah, just, the whole time I was watching, I was just bangarang.
It has like Peter Pan vibes, like hardcore.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm glad that you guys noticed that too, because I was like, what's going on here? There's even like Tina Turner's right hand man is such like a Shmee.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? Anyway. Part of the reason why it feels like that is because this originally was supposed to be a futuristic Lord of the Flies movie. And while Miller was making it or writing it, he was like, well, what if the guy that goes to this group of kids was Max? And then it morphed into a Mad Max movie.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I did want to give just a little bit more background on something that I didn't know until reading about this today. But there is a book that this movie basically completely rips off, to the point that the author tried to sue them. So I found a really good Reddit post by somebody whose name is appropriately Max_Rockatansky. And they said that there are because basically the question on this Reddit thread was, why do people not like Thunderdome? Because this person had watched it and they really enjoyed it. And then Max here says there's surface level reasons and deeper reasons. For surface level reasons, there's a lot more Hollywood financial backing for this one, which resulted in strange decisions like putting the dated 80s pop music into the film. This one is also the only one that has a PG-13 rating.
That was
Partly
gonna be my biggest gripe.
Well, partly because that was a new rating. So I don't think it was a rating when 2 came out.
Yeah, that would make sense. And then also, obviously having Tina Turner in this, they were trying very hard and had more to make this appeal to an American audience, and also had more American Hollywood involvement. So that's why Tina Turner is in the movie. Also, no cool cars. And a lot more just kind of like goofy shit.
Yeah, but I want to mention real quick, Fury Road's also PG-13, which is fucking crazy to think about.
I think
how much PG-13 has just
expanded,
changed.
but it shies away from some of the odd slapstick comedic beats that you get from this. While there is still like little tiny glimpses of that in Fury Road, it's not to near the extent that this is.
I think another thing on the surface level, kind of what you're talking about too, is how kind of savage 1 and 2 are, where there are rape scenes in both and people getting like brutally murdered, and then in this one that's kind of lacking in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so
from like the brutality of what's happened. And I guess maybe you could there's like thematic reasons that could be, right? So I was trying to justify it to myself where it's like we talked about, we get to see his like descent away from humanity, and then 2 is his humanity coming back. And now it's like pushing that further. So now what does the hero do? And he just continues to save. Like he has his humanity. So this is just like the next step in him saving people.
Yeah, and you could potentially see it as an expansion of like his relationship with the feral kid in the previous one. And now he kind of sees that in all of these other kids. And
losing his own child.
Yeah, and the stuff with his own child. But in terms of deeper level reasons that this person outlines about why this movie suffered, there was a book by the author Russell Hoban called Ridley Walker, and this was about a tribe of kids living in a post-apocalyptic setting. They had developed their own language, rituals, and they also were basically the children of people who were in a plane crash, and the pilot of the plane is like their messiah figure who's destined to return, even down to the name Walker. And he actually had reached out and wanted George Miller, and the producer on this, Terry Hayes, to turn his book into a movie. And they had actually discussed doing it before Thunderdome ever happened. And then they were like, oh, actually, we're not going to make your book into a movie. We're going to go do this instead. And then when the movie came out, he was getting messages from people like, hey, have you seen Mad Max 3? They completely ripped off your book.
Wow.
And so he tried to sue, and he was basically told by all of the lawyers that he contacted that there wasn't enough similarity, and maybe because there's the Thunderdome stuff in the beginning to throw you off the scent. But and I haven't read the book, so I can't say really how much of a ripoff it is, and I'm not throwing shade at George Miller.
Send me that when we get a chance. I'll have to go get it and check it out.
Yeah, this person more so talks about Terry Hayes and Terry Hayes potentially being a piece of shit or whatever. But yeah, so it also kind of potentially wasn't even originally a George. Like you said, it wasn't originally a Mad Max story because of the Lord of the Flies thing, and then on top of that, it's also ripping off a different unrelated thing to Mad Max. But for the first 40 minutes of it, you get Max, for a bit of the plot, he in classic Max fashion is kind of wandering out of the desert because he needs something, and he has
with some luscious locks.
I was so happy when they cut his hair, but he just looks fucking ridiculous. I was like, is that why he wanted to make Passion of the Christ? Just because he was like, I was Jesus in Thunderdome, and now I'm gonna make a Jesus movie. But he is traveling through the desert in his little like wagon car thing that he has now. They've basically completely abandoned regular cars in favor of wagons and stuff. And I guess a lot of that came from Terry Hayes hating the cars in Road Warrior and wanting to take it further in the direction of like weird post-apocalyptic vehicles and stuff. So anyway, in another confusing thing, if you've just come off of Road Warrior, we get, Bruce Spence?
Yes.
Coming in as not the gyro pilot from the previous movie, but almost the exact same character flying a plane, but now he has a son, and he's a different character.
Like
Jebediah
or something?
Yeah,
Jebediah.
So I guess in an interview he was saying that they had already started filming. The person that was supposed to play that dropped out, so they're like, hey, you want to come do this? And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll come do it. So yes, it is a different character, but then he also went on to say like it's spiritually the same character. And it's supposed to be like a continuation and an embodiment of that character, just as a different character played by the same actor, which makes no fucking sense, but
And I knew going in that was the case, and that we've already talked about the whole, like, even Miller has stated in interviews that these are supposed to be more folk tales about Max than they are actual continuity you should be concerned with. But
who's to say that people didn't look the same? Like,
yeah,
could have been his twin. We don't know. We don't know his lineage.
So he ends up getting ambushed by this guy, and he goes into, is it Gastown in this? Is it called Gastown? Or is it, no, it's Bartertown.
Bartertown.
Yeah, Gastown's in Fury Road. So Max ends up in Bartertown, and he meets up with Tina Turner, and she basically says, like, hey, if you can help us out. She wants to take control of Bartertown, but Bartertown is kind of being held by the balls by Master Blaster, which is, Master is this little dwarf dude, and Blaster is his big, I don't know, maybe brother, maybe son, bodyguard type guy, and they control the farm of pigs underground that creates the methane to
the
run
electrical
the town.
grid.
Yeah, so they're kind of holding this town hostage, and Tina Turner wants to rule the place. So she's like, hey, if you kill Blaster so I can manipulate Master in the Thunderdome, then I'll get you your car and all your shit back, and you're good to go. So Max agrees and goes into...
And she wants him to, this is important to note, too, moving forward, she wants him to do it more subtly. She could just go kill him, but she doesn't want the backlash from that. So she wants Max to do it, who's this stranger, make it seem like it's just pure happenstance and that nothing's on her.
Yeah, so he goes up and challenges Master Blaster by accusing them of stealing his car. I liked the whole bit about he's in there and he's the only one who knows how to, like, disarm the explosives and the alarm system, which is a carryover from the previous movie where he's, like, rigged his car up. And while he's doing that, he realizes the vulnerability of Blaster is super sensitive to sound, so he just happens to have this, like, boatswain whistle that he can blow. And then we get what I am 100% certain was the inspiration for the cage match fight with Bonesaw McGraw in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Bonesaw is ready.
Yeah, where they go into the Thunderdome, which is this big domed cage, and it's covered in people, which I thought was pretty cool because then as they're fighting, people are just getting murked, like, through the bars of the Thunderdome. But as it's repeated a million times in the movie, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. No rules outside of that. They have to go in and fight to the death, and I forgot about this part, they get strapped to these, like, bungee cables.
Yeah, I did not remember that either.
Yeah, and they have weapons mounted all around inside the Thunderdome, and they have to, fly around and swing around. And I didn't read in any of the trivia, so I'm not 100% sure if Gibson did all of his own stunts in this. It looks like it's him flying around, but I will say, I mean, it's very inventive. It feels like some weird shit that post-apocalyptic people would come up with to entertain themselves.
Or some fucking Nickelodeon guts shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like then you got to go down the big slide that looks like a tongue into a giant pie.
The aggro crack.
Yeah, so he fights in the Thunderdome, and he
has to kill him. Those are the rules of the thing.
Yeah, so he's about to kill Blaster, and then Blaster's helmet comes off, and he sees that Blaster is an intellectually challenged or disabled dude, and he doesn't want to kill him. I saw people in some forums, like, really confused as to why he did this. To me, it was just Max didn't want to kill a person who really didn't have an agency of their own and was obviously being manipulated by other people. And also it could have reminded him of there is a disabled guy in the first movie that he runs into on the farm. And then it could potentially, like, remind him of his kid or something, something. So it kind of shows that by this third movie, he's not completely cold-blooded. He does have some humanity, and he does... which shows progression across the 3 movies. So it does feel like they're still progressing his character. But he doesn't want to kill Blaster, and so then it ends up being revealed that there was this deal between Tina Turner and Max, and she ends up saying, fuck it, and having them kill Blaster. And then they are like, well, you didn't follow the rules, you fucked up, so we got to go, what is it, break a deal,
spin the wheel.
Bust a deal, spin the wheel. Everything rhymes in this. That's the thing in the future, is everything has to rhyme and be goofy as shit.
A couple cool things about Tina Turner is they were like, you gotta shave your head. So she's like, okay. So she just shaved her head, and then that dress that she wore was 150 pounds because it was that was metal.
Yeah,
and she wore it, and I was like, that's fucking crazy. Like, good for you.
I know that there's some people who've had complaints about this performance by her. I thought that she was fun.
Yeah.
So I don't think she's bad in the movie. I just think it's distracting that it's her.
Yeah.
Because with everybody else outside of Mel Gibson, because he became such a big star, they are all no-name people basically that feel like they have existed in this world. And Tina Turner, like, I think she fits in perfectly with this world, and I love that she stands out from the rest of the Mad Max villains throughout the movies. One being a woman, and two being highly intelligent and well-spoken and not fucked up mutated. And so it makes sense why she would like have all this control and everything. But just the fact that it was Tina Turner, I think if they hadn't also had 2 Tina Turner songs in the movie, it would have been less distracting. But the fact that it opens with a Tina Turner song and then ends with a Tina Turner song, I was like, well, don't do that if you want us to kind of distance from the fact that this is Tina Turner. But they wanted to sell people on the fact that she was in the movie.
Right. So then Max spins the wheel. He gets banished from Bartertown. While
Exile.
He gets, which I was very confused. They spin the wheel. It lands on Gulag. But apparently the future interpretation of the word gulag is that they put you in like a Disneyland mask and then send you out into the desert. Because a gulag is like a prison, like a labor prison. But anyway, they send him out into the desert and they're like, if you survive, whatever. And he does. Stumbles upon a tribe of lost boys run by a...
lost kids.
Lost boys and girls run by Rufio. Runs into this group of kids, finds out that they have some sort of messianic prophecy with a drawing on the wall that looks exactly like him for some reason. But they are all...
But it's a captain.
Yeah, they're all the children, and I guess children of the children, I would assume, because there are very young children, which to me would mean that some of these kids got pregnant and had kids.
Yeah, so some of what I've seen is that this plane crashed, and the one that's narrating toward the end and searching for everybody or helping Max is the oldest one. So she was probably young when the plane crashed because it's been like 15 years, right? I don't know how long for them, but since the last movie. And so she had to have been in somewhere in there, and I think it's like the plane crashed during all the nuclear stuff that took place. So then there was a group of adults that went searching for people and never came back. And then another group goes out and goes searching. And then this is kind of what's left in the aftermath of the adults, like continuing to go out and search parties and not being around for anybody.
Yeah,
and so that's she's out searching.
And interestingly, I think I had mentioned in the previous episode, either in the original version that we recorded or in the re-recording, that the actor who played the feral kid had that as his like personal unscripted backstory for his character, was that he had been on a plane with his parents, and the plane had like stopped for fuel or crashed, and then the parents had disappeared like to go find help, and he just grew up by himself. And that's, I don't know if Miller was like, oh, well, I'll just take that and apply that to all these kids, but it's a cool concept. And also I was very curious watching this whole movie if it was still being filmed in Australia, because it does, but it is. It's Australia. It's just more varied locations of Australia, but it definitely doesn't have, to me, the same wasteland look as the previous film did. It's a lot more like classic desert sand dunes and stuff, and then obviously you get to the oasis and it's all gorgeous and water and all that stuff. And so some different locales, which they said made this movie obviously a much more difficult shoot because they were shooting in so many different varied locations.
Do you guys think that if you were to take the kid story out and kind of figure out a different way to tie the beginning and the ending here, that this could have been decent Mad Max movie, and as a kid plot could have been something different?
Yes, 100%.
Why?
It's not as entertaining. Like, I feel like you're going somewhere, and I feel like if there would have been somebody else that Max would have met up with in the desert, and that was the reason why we go back rather than, whatever the fuck's going on with these kids, I think that it would have just been more entertaining. I think that it could have been a tighter turnaround time. I know this movie's not super, super long, but I mean, you chop 15 minutes off of the kid bullshit and get a more interesting story in its place.
Do you think you would have liked a whole Mad Max movie that was the kid stuff? Like,
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like something different? Or do we want we want the octane?
So for me, the kid stuff doesn't even remotely work, and for a couple reasons. One is that it doesn't feel unique. It just feels like a ripoff of Peter Pan, and pretty much everybody agrees on that.
Or
And if the kids had been, well, I think I haven't read Lord of the Flies, but to me it feels like it's even more like fanciful than something like Lord of the Flies. Like these kids aren't super cutthroat. They seem kind of like sheltered in this oasis and they don't understand the rest of the world. If they had been like kid versions of the Bartertown people where they have their own fucked up society of crazy post-apocalyptic shit they do, and you were like, oh damn, like kids are doing this shit, that's insane. That would have felt a lot more Mad Max, where it's just like a bunch of weirdo kids who are doing crazy shit to survive. Instead, they're all, speaking to True, and they're all talking about Tomorrow Land, and all, they all have this like dumbass made up language, and everything they say is like, and then I was a seeing through that. They sound like fucking Gungans from the Phantom Menace, where it's like they have this.
At least the Australian accent's charming.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, so people might have been kind of annoyed by the feral kid in the second one. Let's just have 100 more annoying kids. And I'm not saying that they're terrible. It's just that if you're gonna have kids in a movie, they better be damn fucking good, and
they better be perfectly splendid.
Great example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think because of the way that their whole bit just didn't work for me, and it didn't feel very. It just didn't feel very Mad Max.
Does it feel better when we go back to Bartertown and they're involved in that? Or do you even dislike that because of their involvement and the reasoning behind it? Either one of you. I mean, you can answer too.
It's just easier to stomach when they're back in Bartertown because you're back in a setting that feels Mad Max, and then you get into cool cars exploding and shit.
Yeah, you need the typical Mad Max climax to the film, which is the crazy vehicle chase, which is still good here. It's not as action-packed maybe as Road Warrior is, and definitely nowhere near what it is like in Fury Road, but it's still entertaining. I know that we kind of lose even more of like the real world car kind of vibe when we're getting into more of these like dune buggies and crazy shit.
Trains.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck?
But it's still fun. And I think that like the bantering and bickering between the cars and all the shit, like I said, are all good precursors to what you get in Fury Road, where there's all of this like, everybody's, gotten quips and one-liners and witness me this and all this other shit going on. So I still think that part works, but I think it works in spite of how half-assed this whole kid storyline is.
Well, and it just kind of seems like it's conflicted as to what it wants to do between like Max and these kids, because if this was going to be the last Mad Max movie, because we know it's not now at this point. At the time, if the idea had been this is the last Mad Max movie and we're going to have him maybe meet these kids, begrudgingly eventually decide to help them, succeed in helping them, and then maybe settle down with them in this new community and have that be kind of like the wholesome wrap up of like, oh, he lost his family in the first movie. Now he's basically been wandering not only the outer wasteland, but the wasteland within himself, and trying to find a new family. And now he finds this, new community of kids, and you play the kids the way they are in this movie, where they're, like kind of hopelessly optimistic about this Tomorrow Land, and he's like, no, it doesn't exist, and somehow they're able to create their own Tomorrow Land in the ruins of Sydney or whatever. I'm like, you should have just stayed in the Oasis. It was gorgeous there, and he was trying to convince them to stay there. He's like, no, this is dope, stay here. If they'd done that and he'd kind of had that full turnover into being back into like, okay, I'm nice Max now, that would have been one thing. But the movie ends him again being abandoned in the desert to wander off and go on to the next adventure. And then by the time we get to Fury Road, he's full-on paranoid schizophrenic, and he's completely lost his humanity, and he's speaking like the rest of the characters in these movies, where it's just like, I'm doing this, me, this, and so it feels like, okay, if we know this is where his character, assuming like George Miller does that these are supposed to be the same character.
Right. If picturing Tom Hardy as like a 50-year-old Mel Gibson.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work in terms of like, okay, it just feels like a big waste of time to just put him back in the same position that he was. And we kind of already did this same story in the last movie of like Max decides to help some people out and kind of gets a bit of his humanity back and then off into the desert. And it's like, okay, we just did the same thing again, but not as cool by a long shot. And so, yeah, or if they had made the kids really fucked up and he had like come back to Bartertown with like a savage army of kids, that would, I mean, kind of, that's sort of the idea. You know, I'm sure Tina Turner and them were surprised that it's like, oh, he made friends with a bunch of these weirdo kids that we didn't know about.
Or maybe their parents were trapped or something, and they couldn't find their way back to the Oasis, and they were like there, and it was some kind of a reunion, and or maybe both, and then they're all fucked up, and then they just kill them all anyway. Like,
well, they basically my
Yeah.
little bit of extra material that I brought to this discussion because I didn't like this movie as much was I went and I read the comic I had talked about that
nice.
bridges this movie into Fury Road because I wanted to see how they handled that, because in my head I was like, I don't see how these things really connect. And it's a pretty good read. It's quick. And it basically does this story, but better. Like, it does it the way that I would have liked to have seen it, where Max in the beginning goes to Thunderdome. It's supposed to be like Thunderdome Plus or whatever, but it's the same concept. And it's just like, oh, in a few years, the new version of Thunderdome it's not one man enters. It's like a free for all. Like, they just let a fuck ton of people in and they all have to fight to the death.
We should have a battle royale.
But Max is wandering through the wasteland trying to find parts to put his interceptor back together. He finds that this gas town has the engine that he needs, so he's like he volunteers to join Thunderdome, fights his way through it. A woman on the cage helps him by giving him a flare that he like ends up sticking in this dude's eye to defeat him. So then he wins the Thunderdome, wins the engine, but this gang called the Buzzards, that are like these fucked up bladed armor guys, they think he cheated because he got an outside weapon, so they want revenge. And so then what they end up doing is he leaves with the engine. He starts driving a little bit. They ambush him and stick a knife in his femoral artery in his leg. And they're like, ooh. And they basically do a bit like from the first one where they're like, you have two choices. You can pull it out and bleed out in 5 minutes, or you can leave it in and just starve and die out here in the desert. So he ends up ripping it out, starts bleeding out. And the woman who helped him earlier, she had been tracking him since Thunderdome. She gets him and she's like, hey, basically I was hanging out at Thunderdome to find a warrior good enough to go rescue my daughter who's been kidnapped by the Buzzards. And so he has to infiltrate this like underground buzzard hideout and find the daughter. And she's been like crawling around Die Hard style in the tunnels and shit. And he finds her, and they basically have to, just the two of them, like in all these dark corridors and stuff, shotgun blast and fight their way out of this compound. And right as they're about to escape, he's like, I got to do one more thing. And he ends up going into the room where all the Buzzards are hanging out because he wants his fucking car. And they took his car. So he's like, I got to go get my car. And goes in, and they have this big cavern. This freaked me out. This big cavern where she's like, don't open your mouth. And he's like, what? And it's just covered in moths because these Buzzards breed moths to eat. Oh. And so there's this big cavern, and he has like a cool flare fight with them like in this cavern. Gets his car back, and then there's a dope car chase like through the underground cavern and then out to the outside, and they're all chasing after him, and he's shotgun blasting through the windows and stuff. This
takes place after the events of Beyond Thunderdome?
Yeah, so I guess
all of that happens, though.
Yeah, so that's all in canon between.
So then the kids go to New Sydney or whatever. He goes off into the desert. While in the desert, this all happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I guess he figured, Thunderdome's a good way for me to like, go compete and get what I want or whatever. So they end up escaping. The girl is like, thank you, you saved my life. He's just like, okay, whatever, And so he rescues her, reunites her with the mom. They're like, hey, you can come stay with us. You can come live with us. And he's like, no, that's not, it's not my thing. I got to go back into the desert. And they take off one direction. He takes off the other direction. He's looking in his rearview mirror, and then he goes, oh, fuck. And the Buzzards come and just like in the first movie, fucking plow through the woman and the daughter and just annihilate them. And he like tries to come back in time, and he ends up playing like chicken with the lead guy, and they like smash into each other, and it kills them, and it's this whole badass thing. And then at the end, he's just like, and now I'm all alone again, and I just spent all that time trying to save those people, and it didn't even fucking matter. And and then he wanders off to go do Fury Road, and I'm like, that was basically the same story, like, opens with Thunderdome, and then goes into what I thought was a much more compelling and interesting like in between plot that felt a lot more Mad Max. Most interesting part though is that they do a whole flashback thing in the beginning that recaps all of the movies, and it's basically just like comic book versions of scenes from those movies. And it's like a storyteller guy recapping the whole thing. And they do this like it kind of looks like a mix between Mel Gibson and Tom Hardy, and like as the comic progresses, he looks more and more just like Tom Hardy until eventually at the end, it's like they kind of subtly tried to transition one into the other. But I would recommend checking it out. I think it's 3 issues, and I think they collected the whole thing, including the Furiosa and the Immortan Joe comics. I haven't read those yet, but I was glad I read it because it made me think, okay, like this is the better version of Thunderdome, and I wish this had been made into the movie, but
yeah, easier to do in hindsight.
Yeah. There's one additional thing that I wanted to mention about the movie that I liked, which is how things end between Auntie and Max, where she realizes that she's been had, that the stuff is gone, that it's not going to happen anymore, that Master's gotten away, and she's just kind of like, cool, you bested me, you're cool. And then takes off.
Yeah, she's just like, respect.
Yeah, exactly. And is not like angry about it, and like there's no like beating his ass in the streets or whatever. Like she's just like, yeah.
Well, again, that's why I feel like she stands out from the rest of the Mad Max villains, because I think most of the other villains would have just blown his head off.
Yeah.
But she's like, no, respect. I did want to mention real quick that I guess there was a cut scene that I really wish had been in the movie where Max has a nightmare about his wife and his son.
I did hear about this one.
And he ends up waking up crying because he realizes that he has become just like the motorcycle gang from the first movie. And I think that's a really cool like reflection on his arc and how he really has become, the same, if not worse, as those guys from the beginning. In some ways, obviously not all
we don't
ways.
see too much of him being like a total asshole.
I think Fury Road is where he seems the most like a piece of shit, but like in a cool way. And then the only other thing that I wanted to mention, I think you brought this up on a previous episode, but the music video for Tupac's 1996 hit "California Love" was shot in a Thunderdome set and features Mad Max inspired vehicles and attire. So I would honestly say go watch the California Love music video instead of watching Beyond Thunderdome.
Looking like a Rob Liberace. All right. Well, anything else?
I think that there's still a little value here, but I think it mostly exists in that first 40 and that last 15.
So are you right now, based off just these watches, 213?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, say it. You too?
Yeah, 2, 1, 3. And I would say really you only need to watch the first 40 minutes of this movie just so you can understand the references that have become part of pop culture, just so you can understand where Thunderdome comes from. It is a badass sequence.
The
and
two
so you
men
can understand
enter,
the two
one
men
man.
enter, one man leave. Yeah, so, and I think Master Blaster is a cool concept that gets carried over into like some of the stuff that happens in Fury Road. So I think it's worth checking out those first 40 minutes for it, but you could honestly just skip straight from Road Warrior to Fury Road, and I don't think you're missing anything that's important.
I mean, you could watch them out of order, and I don't think that you'd really be that upset. Aside from if you watched Fury Road first, you'd be like, well, it's kind of hard to go. You don't get to put all that shit back in the box.
Yeah. I know what this is going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, right on. So we're going to continue next week with Mad Max Fury Road. So if you haven't seen that, do yourself a favor, because I think this is at the top of all of our list as far as these movies go.
And this might be a top 10 science fiction movie for me wholesale.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real Master Blaster of a conversation, but also we've basically been trying really hard not to just like gush about how good Fury Road is, but I was going to say how great would it be if we had thrown everybody a curveball and said next week we were talking about Happy Feet. I found out today though that probably the biggest reason that Miller made Happy Feet is because he was making the Road Warrior and was like sitting in a coffee shop or a bar with a guy who said, "Oh, hey, you know what this Australian outback wasteland reminds me of? Antarctica. You need to make a movie in Antarctica." And he looked out and he was like, maybe I should. And then it just kind of like snowballed.
He wrote Happy Feet as well?
Yeah, so
fucking weird, dude. What a cool guy.
Yeah, and he wrote Babe. Like, I mean, he is a man of many faces.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, sometimes you write a story that has a guy named Pig Killer in it. Sometimes you write a story about a pig that's a sheepdog. And then sometimes you take that pig into the city.
And you cash all those checks.
Right on. Well, that'll wrap her up. Like we said, Fury Road next weekend. If you haven't already, check out our Patreon episode where we talked about Chud this week, which was actually a pretty good conversation.
Yeah.
And a decent movie. And we're talking about Dark City next week. So those are pretty good episodes. I'm having a good time with them.
Yeah.
And they have gotten better.
Better, at, even though somehow all 4 of them have been selected by you.
Dude, that's not me. Anyway,
You and I are going to have to gang up.
if you're,
And kill him.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about what we're talking about, then head over to Patreon where you can get that for $5 a month. And we will see you next time. I have been Tone.
I've been John.
And who runs Bartertown?
Master.
Internet darling Anthony runs Bartertown.
Thanks for watching and or listening.
Keep it creepy.
Peace.